Hi, this is Ofori, the digital reader, and today I'm going to be talking about the books I bought and the books that I read in the month of December. So I will start out with the two books I bought. I just bought two books this month. I read four books the month before, so using my normal formula, I can buy two. I did not buy any books from BookBub, just because I usually only pick up something from BookBub if it's really of interest to me, not just because I gave myself a $10 budget. So the two books I bought, the first book is by Bernard Cornwell. It's Excalibur. It's the last book of the Warlord series, which is Winter King is the first book, Enemy of God is the second book, and then Excalibur is the third book. This is a retelling of the King Arthur mythos, with King Arthur as basically a warlord, or a king, but really more of a warlord in the Dark Ages. Very low fantasy. The first two books I absolutely loved, so I knew I was going to pick this up because this is in my TBR for 2025. Next book I bought is Susanna Clarke, The Wood at Midwinter. I'm a big fan of Susanna Clarke. I'm a big fan of her style, the genre that she has, which is kind of like this 18th, 19th century fantasy setting that really deals a lot with fairies and things like that. So I'm a big fan of her. So whenever she has a book, I go ahead and pick it up. So those are just the two books I picked up in December, and now for the books that I read in December. So Bernard Cornwell's Enemy of God, I just finished that book and it was fantastic. This is the Warlord series by Bernard Cornwell. Is a retelling of the King Arthur mythology, but in a Dark Ages setting with very low fantasy. And his books are so incredible because although they're about the rise and fall of King Arthur, really the books are about the fall. In other words, even when he's rising, because of the way it's written, because most people who read this are going to be fans of the mythos anyway, you kind of know that the fall is coming. And watching that fall coming, watching all these things fall apart and all these portents happen, it's just amazing. This book was so amazing to me. It definitely one of the best books I read this year. I mean, I've only really teared up at about 3 books I've read in my life. I mean, I don't read romances. I'm not saying that everybody tears up at romances, but it would seem like romances would definitely pull at the emotional heartstrings more than some other books. So for me, as a fantasy and science fiction reader primarily, there really have only been 2 other books that I cried when I read. One was Songmaster by Orson Scott Card, which is just a beautiful and sad book. And the other is A Wizard of Earthsea. I just thought that was another really beautiful story. But this one was just incredible to me. If anybody wants a good read, that's going to be 3 books that will take up your time and just take you through this whole world. It's not just the King Arthur stuff is good. And if you're a fan of King Arthur, you'll be like, oh, I see what they changed there. I see how they interpreted that differently. Those things are pretty cool. But the other thing is, even if you're not, it's just this incredible historical fiction trio of books that just take you through the fall of pagan Britain and the rise of Christian Britain and all the things that entail there. So this was a complete no-brainer. This was absolutely a 5-star book. I don't know if I would have given it 6 stars if I did that, but this is the highest of the 5-star books. This was a really, really great read. I cannot wait to read the 3rd book in the series, and I imagine I'm going to feel a kind of emptiness after I finish that 3rd book. I've enjoyed these stories so much. So the next book is Krazy Kat by Cantor. Now I actually bought this book by accident. Krazy Kat basically is an early 20th century cartoon strip, was like one of the precursors of comics and cartoons. And so I saw a YouTube video about that and I was like, oh, well, let me see what's going on with this cartoon strip. So I went to buy a book of cartoons by Krazy Kat and Ignatz Mouse. That's the two characters, kind of Tom and Jerry-ish. But Ignatz Mouse is the aggressor. So it's like Tom and Jerry, but the mouse is the aggressor and the bully. But it's an old cartoon strip. And I went to buy it, and I accidentally bought this book instead. The comic strip, the book that I wanted to buy, this is the cover, and this is what the comic strips look like. But this is the book I bought instead by Cantor. And I'm going to tell you, I don't know what to say about this book. This book was one of the strangest, most fascinating books I've read in a long time. It's almost sounds crazy to explain the book, and there are things about the book I just can't explain. And I'll have to be honest, I don't think I got the book. I don't think I got what he was trying to do and the message he was trying to bring forward in the book. But it was an incredibly well written book. So here is the basic premise of the book. Krazy Kat and Ignatz Mouse were a world famous cartoon strip in real life and in this book. And at some point, Ignatz Mouse took Krazy Kat to the first testing of the atomic bomb in Los Alamos, New Mexico. And when Krazy Kat saw the bomb explode, something changed in her, and she got hit with some radioactive ash from the bomb. And it was the first time that she felt pain. And then she kind of had a breakdown, because now that she felt pain, all the times when Ignatz Mouse was doing all this Wile E. Coyote stuff to her, hitting her with bricks and dropping stuff on her and all this kind of stuff, she now realized that he was abusing her, not trying to have fun, and he was trying to hurt her, not just playing around. So she had the breakdown and basically quit the cartoon strip. Now, all that is pre-story. That doesn't occur in the book. The book kind of starts in her retirement from the cartoon strip. And Ignatz Mouse is trying to get her to start up the cartoon strip again. This is the closest thing I could say is it is a love story about a relationship that is neither healthy and is oftentimes abusive. It is a book that talks about Krazy Kat kind of as the vulnerability of women, and Ignatz Mouse kind of is the cruelty of men. And it takes these two characters through several scenarios and even another reality in which they connect with each other, and in doing that they kind of showcase human nature. And I think that the writer is trying to show some things about human nature through these characters. That's what I got for you. It was an incredibly well written book, but I just never really could pick a plot out. And I think that's why this book frustrated me a little, is it is pretty much plotless. There is no real plot to the book other than what I said. And it had some really beautiful writing, but it wasn't going anywhere. And I guess I struggled with that because I'm a person who likes to read a book that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And this book was kind of like a Cloud Atlas kind of thing, where the characters were in different roles, in different scenarios, in different people almost. and their actions interacting together is what really the book was about. It wasn't about what they were doing, but their interactions together, I guess. So all that to say, I couldn't recommend this book because I couldn't explain it and not seem insane. It was some great writing, but I'm gonna have to give it a 3 because I didn't really understand it. I definitely couldn't give it a 2 because it was magnificently written, but I just didn't really understand it. I'm glad I read it, and honestly, there's some stuff that's in the book that I still think about, some passages and some parts of the book. It was just a weird experience for me. I'm going to give it 3 stars, and 3 stars to me in this situation is decide for yourself what you think of this book, because this is a book where it's very hard to explain to another person what you experienced in the book. So 3 stars for this book. Next book is a Yank at Valhalla. This was a wonderful old school ripping tale. This is from the pulp era of writing, and this is about a pilot who is flying a plane and goes through this, I guess, dimensional rift, and he basically ends up in the Valhalla that we created our myths from. So these people aren't actually gods. They have like godlike science, but it all comes out to them basically being the inspiration for our Norse mythologies. And it's about this guy's experience there and all the hijinks that ensue. This book is in the line of John Carter, Manhunter of Mars. It's one of those things where a guy goes someplace else and it's the American in this new environment. But it was very, very good. I have to admit, I'm a big fan of Edmond Hamilton because he was a good writer from that era. He wrote these nice ripping yarns, lots of heroism and stuff. This was just a good, heroic, fun, not too deep read, and I would definitely recommend this to anybody who likes pulp fiction, who likes pulpy fiction and old school science fiction and old school action heroes like Conan and Doc Savage and that kind of stuff. This would be a book I would definitely recommend, and this book absolutely gets 4 stars. And the last book I read was Ann Tyler's The Accidental Tourist. This is one of probably my top 5 movies of all time. And I've always been thinking about reading the book, but I've been nervous that reading the book would spoil the movie for me. But eventually, this month, I read The Accidental Tourist, and it was a wonderful book. I still feel the movie's better, but the book absolutely was as good as the movie. My favorite part about reading this book that's different from the movie is that the main character, Macon Leary, you get a lot more of his thoughts and what he's thinking about and kind of his personality quirks in the book. But the movie, although they didn't include as much, because the movie was so perfectly cast and acted, you still pick up all of the stuff that they're putting in the book about his inner thoughts just from the way his character was portrayed by, I believe it's William Hurt, John Hurt, William Hurt. Definitely it's William Hurt. I've recommended that movie to a lot of people, and they've saw it and they just were like, eh. And I think the reason it resonates for me, it is about it is a love story for the people who aren't perfect. And The Accidental Tourist is a book about how people can fall in love even if they're social outcasts, even if they might not be somebody who people really want to date. you can find somebody and that person can help you become a person who works out in that relationship. So that's why I love it. I think some people look at it and they go, these are just a bunch of weirdos falling in love. And they're absolutely right. It's just that really endeared it to me, maybe not to some people. So this was a wonderful book. And because of that, this definitely will get 5 stars from me. I would recommend anybody read this if you're getting a little bit tired of the common tropes of romance and romance books where it's basically about 2 people who think they're not great, but when we read them, we realize that they're highly desirable. They have good jobs, they're attractive, they're funny, they have a bunch of friends. This is not those people, but yet they still find a way to be together. And I guess that's it. So this is Ofori, the digital reader, and keep reading.